All right, today we're going to start chapter 4. We're going to look at how to graph equations in slope-intercept form. Now, slope-intercept form is something that we talked about a little bit last year. Does anyone remember what slope-intercept form is? It would be like the form of an equation we used most often last year. Y equals, anybody remember? Say it, Nathan.
Y equals mx.
Plus what? It is b. Very good. Okay. So this is the form of the equation we're going to use most often. It's what you typically see equations written in. The whole thing is equal to y. Okay. Now, obviously, we know x and y are coordinates of an ordered pair. Yes. Does anyone remember what m or b would stand for? It's in the name of our lesson today.
Is m slope?
M is the slope. So that means B would be what? What's the title of our lesson called? Slope intercept. So if M is the slope, B would be the y-intercept. Okay? Really, this is the best way to graph too, because it's the easiest way to graph. You don't have to make a table. You don't have to worry about like finding the x and y intercept. If your equation is already in this form, it makes graphing a whole lot easier. Okay? All right, so here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to talk about is how to write an equation in slope-intercept form, and then we're going to look at how to graph it. Okay? So if they tell you that the slope is 5 and that your y-intercept is 8, and the first thing they want you to do is just write an equation in slope-intercept form. Can anyone tell me what my equation would be? Nathan?
Y equals 5x plus 8.
Perfect. Right? Because we said earlier the slope is m, the value in front of x, so we plug that in here. So we replace m with 5. And then our y-intercept is the value at the end. So if it's positive 8, we're just going to say plus 8 right here. Okay? So our equation in slope-intercept form is y is equal to 5x plus 8. All right? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and change this to graph paper. So now we're going to graph. Now, I'm putting my x and y-intercept, like I'm showing that really low on my graph because I know that my y-intercept is 8 and I know my slope is 5, so I'm planning ahead. I know my graph is going to get really tall, okay? All right, so is it possible for us to graph the y-intercept on this graph without doing any work? Yes, Cage, what's my y-intercept? What's my y-intercept? We just talked about it.
8.
8, so where would I put that on my graph?
8 up.
Yep, just go up 8. Okay, that's the easiest thing to put on there. And then I'm going to use slope to graph at least 2 other points before I make my line. Okay, now I really want my slope to be written as a fraction because I'm going to use rise over run. That will help me know how to graph my points. So what would my slope be as a fraction? Any whole number as a fraction, you just put it over what? 1. Okay, so my slope is going to be 5 over 1. Now, here's why I want it written as a fraction, because that tells me how to get to my next point. So how do you think from the y-intercept I would get to my next point using rise over run? Somebody take a wild guess. Nathan?
So you would move right once and move up 5.
Yes, just switch that order. Rise means you're moving up or down. Run means you're going left and right. Okay? So from this point, all you have to do is count up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then to the right 1. And then don't you think we do the same thing from that point we just put on the graph? We're going to go up 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. right 1. Now do I have enough points to draw my line? Yes. Okay. If you use a ruler, it'll help your line be a little more straight than what I'm drawing. Okay. So, do you see how this will help your graphing move a little bit quicker? You just put the y-intercept on your graph and then use rise over run to find 2 more points and you're done. Okay? We're going to look at a couple more so you'll know for sure and you'll feel good about it. But, all right, let's look at if you have a slope of -4 and a y-intercept of 6. Okay, can anybody tell me first what would be my equation in slope-intercept form, just plugging in those 2 numbers for m and for b?
6 equals 4x. Oh, wait, no. 6 equals,
You're close, you're putting the 6 in the wrong place. We're not plugging in anything for y and x because those are our ordered pairs.
y equals 6x plus -4.
Switch them. Slope always goes in front of x.
-4.
There we go. -4x plus 6. Okay, slope will always be in front of x. Your y-intercept always sits at the end. Y-intercept is easy to find because it's at the end of your equation. Okay. Right, so same thing. The first point I'm always going to put on my graph is my y-intercept. How do I put that y-intercept on my graph? If my y-intercept is 6. Anybody?
So, up 6.
Good, just go up 6. Okay, then we talked about we really want our slope to be a fraction, so we can use rise over run. How could I write my slope as a fraction? -4 over 1. Okay, now, since my slope is -4, what direction do you think I'm going to move? Down. Okay, so I'm going to move down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. Down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right 1. Okay, now here's the mistake I see a lot of people make on this when they have a negative. If you have a negative, does this line that I've drawn show negative slope? Yeah, so here's what I see a lot of people do. They'll graph their y-intercept and they see that it's negative and they'll move down 4 and then left, and then down 4 and left. Well, if I did that, it's going to give me a positive slope. Okay? So what you should always check after you draw your line, if my slope is negative, did my graph give me a negative slope, or did I make a mistake? Okay? So just be careful about that. It doesn't matter which one you choose, because you could go up and to the left. That would still show negative slope, because that's the opposite of what we did, right? Down and to the right. You just need to be careful about how you're putting your graph on here. Okay? All right. Okay. What if it gives it to you like this? It gives you an equation. Instead of telling you the slope and the y-intercept, it just gives you an equation. This equation is almost in standard form. Can anyone tell me why this is not in standard form, Nate?
It's -3x.
Yeah, because the value in front of x is negative, okay? But that doesn't really matter for us right now. All we want to do is move it into slope-intercept form. So is there a way that I can change this equation to be in slope-intercept form? It would only take me one step. Subtract what?
Y.
Not y.
Add 3x.
Add 3x, because I want y equals mx plus b. So all I need to do is move 3x to the other side. Can I actually add 3x and 6? No, they're not like terms. So which one would I write first if I want it in slope-intercept form?
3x.
3x. 6 is positive, so I'm going to say plus 6. If it was negative, I would say minus 6. Okay? Now can I tell what my slope and my y-intercept are? Yes. So now we can graph from here. Okay, somebody tell me, what is my y-intercept for this equation?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody? Come on, y'all, stay with me. What's my y-intercept?
6.
It's easy to find because it's always at the end. It's 6, so I'm going to go up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Listen, if you want to come over here to the side and write it out, if that helps you, then do it. Okay? What would be my slope as a fraction? 3 over 1. Good. Okay, so I've already graphed my y-intercept. I went up 6. My slope is positive 3 over 1. Okay, so what direction am I going to move from here? Up how many? 1, 2, 3, and left or right? Right, because I want it to be positive. And then up 3, right 1. Okay, we're gonna do one more like this, and then we'll be almost done. Okay. All right, let's look at 5x plus 2y is equal to 8. All right, so same thing. It's giving me an equation. It's asked me to write an equation in slope-intercept form and then graph. So the first thing I want to do is just change this from standard form into slope-intercept form. Okay. So, somebody tell me, what would be my first step?
Minus 2y.
Mm,
No, minus 5x.
minus 5x, because I want to leave y on the left side. So, those would cancel, and I would get 2y is equal to what?
Negative 5x plus 8.
Good, because I always write the value for x first. Negative 5x plus 8. I'm almost there. What's the only problem with this? The 2y. I need y by itself, so how do I get rid of the 2?
That's true.
Divide by 2. Every number you see, I want you to divide it by 2. Okay? Does 2 divided by 2 cancel?
Yes.
Yes. So I would get y is equal to what? Now, the number in front of x is my slope. Should I leave it as a fraction?
Yes.
Yes, I should. So would I just leave it negative 5/2? Yes.
Any sixth grader who has not voted may go down to the library at this time. And teachers, the students will be coming around shortly for the seventh grade.
Okay, so negative 5x plus what?
4.
Plus 4, because you can actually divide that, okay? So remember, for slope, we don't want a decimal, and we don't want a mixed number because you want to use rise over run. That's telling you what direction to move, okay? All right, so let's go to our graph. Okay, somebody tell me the first point I always put on my graph is what? Y-intercept. What's my y-intercept here? 4. So I'm going to go up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now my slope is negative 5 over 2. So I'm going to use rise over run. What do I need to do to get that next point?
Go down 5 and left 2?
Go
right.
Down 5, right 2. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then right 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right 2. Okay, because you can tell that's going to make your slope negative. Now, here's the question I'm going to ask. What if your graph like you're moving down 5 and right 2, and your graph happens to run out of room? Could you go back to your y-intercept and do the opposite? Go up 5, left 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Okay, that would give you the same point. Try to do it the same way every time without having to switch, because sometimes that messes people up. But if your graph runs out of room, just go back to your y-intercept and then go the opposite direction. It'll give you those same points. Okay. Okay, do we feel like that's an easier way to graph than making a table? Yes. Okay, most of the time it is. So that's how we're doing everything today. Any questions on what we've done so far? Okay, last thing. I'm going to pull up a picture for this. This is in your book. If you want to look at it, it's on page 220. Or you can just look on here. Okay, so we're going to be looking at 33 On 33, it just says write an equation in slope-intercept form for each graph, okay? So what two things would I need to know in order to write an equation in slope-intercept form? We talked about at the very beginning of class. Remember, it's in the name. The slope and the y-intercept. Which one of those is easiest to locate on the graph? Y-intercept. What's my y-intercept here?
5.
1, 2, 3, 4. I know it's kind of hard to see because you're... Okay, so out to the side, I would write my y-intercept is 4. Okay, how could I find my slope? It's the same way we did it on our graphing. What would you use? Rise over run. Now here's where you have to be careful. You have to find a point where it goes exactly through an ordered pair, right? Like, again, this might be difficult for you to see if you're not looking in your book, but can you tell right here that this doesn't go exactly through that ordered pair?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to need to be really careful. This is the place I would go right here. Okay, so if you're counting, how many would I move down to be even with that point? 3, because if I start here, you don't count till you move. So 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be the first part of my slope. Okay, and then how many am I going to move over? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, is my slope positive 3 or negative? How can you tell it's negative? Yeah, just by looking at your graph, okay, and you move down and to the right, okay? So, my y-intercept was 4, my slope was negative 3/5. What would be my equation? Well, what's my y-intercept? Plus 4. Yeah. Okay? So, all you have to do to write your equation is know what is the y-intercept, what is the slope. Okay? Let's look at number 35. Okay, the easy one to find my y-intercept, I'm going to move down how many? 3. Okay, so my y-intercept is 3. Oh, sorry. Positive 3 or negative 3? Negative 3, because I moved down. Okay, and then same thing, I'm looking for a place where it crosses through. I think you could use this right here. Okay, so from my y-intercept, how many would I move up? 1 and over 2. So that means my slope is positive 1/2 or negative? Positive. You can tell that by looking at your graph because your graph goes up. Okay? All right, so Nick, what would be my equation in slope-intercept form? Y equals what?
1/2 x plus negative or minus 3.
Yeah, just minus 3 is fine. Okay, I think that's the first one we've seen where our y-intercept was negative. So if your y-intercept is a negative number, just put minus 3. You don't need to put plus a negative, okay? Now, here's the other thing I'm going to tell you. If you were looking here and you didn't see this point, and instead you used this point here, you could still go up 1, 2, 3, and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is 3 over 6 the same as 1/2?
Yeah.
Yes, but should you put 3/6 as your slope? No, you can write it down, but always simplify, okay? So, just be careful on that. Are you okay if I don't go over these that already give you the slope and the y-intercept? Since we talked about that at the beginning, all you have to do is plug those in for m, plug that in for your y-intercept, okay? How do we feel about this today? Pretty good? Okay, cool.